Okay, let me introduce Anne-Marie Riley to you, please. Anne-Marie is the Vice President for Overseas Operations for CRS, and she's directly responsible for supervising the headquarters-based overseas operations departments for emergencies, overseas support, and program quality and support. She joined CRS in 1992 in El Salvador, primarily working in the health sector. She quickly advanced to senior management positions in Angola, Haiti, Burundi, and Liberia, overseeing multi-sectoral programs in complex civil conflicts. She returned to CRS headquarters to use this experience as the agency's first emergency response technical advisor. In this position, Anne-Marie was instrumental in the creation of CRS's emergency response team in 1999, and subsequently she moved to Nairobi, Kenya, to take on the role of the first team leader of the emergency response team. Under her leadership, the team responded to a variety of high-profile crises in areas including Kosovo, the 1999 conflict, Gujarat, India, the 2001 earthquake, Afghanistan, the 2001 conflict, and Southern Africa, the 2002 food security crisis. After 3 years of service as Regional Director for Southern Africa from 2003 to 2006, covering 7 country programs, Angola, Lesotho, Madagascar, Malawi, South Africa, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, Anne-Marie once again returned to Baltimore in 2006 to work as Director of Overseas Operations Strategy. In 2007, she became Chief of Staff to Catholic Relief Services President Ken Hackett. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Government and French from the University of Notre Dame and a Master's in International Affairs from Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs, with specializations in Economic and Political Development and Latin American Studies. She was born and raised in New City, New York, and currently lives with her family in northern Baltimore. We're very privileged to have Anne-Marie with us today. Thank you.
Thanks. My head is still swimming, I don't know about yours, but after the 2 presentations that I just heard, tremendous overviews of very diverse but obviously connected aspects of all of our kind of experiences, but particularly with Haiti, the particular kind of setting, I think, of some of the natural world aspects of what has impacted Haiti most recently, but also, of course, that much broader historical context, I think has been great in setting the stage. I feel a little bit that I'm going to like bring you all right back down, really, right, with my presentation. But you'll see the connections. I mean, the connections are there, and they're woven throughout this entire presentation. I'm going to try to keep it short and very much want some dynamic of questions back and forth, because that's where I think the more interesting conversations obviously happen. From loss to life, this is really a snapshot of really the last 9 months. So there's a lot that goes behind it. I will talk a little bit about some of the decades at least of work of CRS in Haiti, but I'm not going to touch too deeply on that. I wanted to focus on the post-earthquake primarily, and looking to the future, where we hope, at least with the work of Catholic Relief Services and all of our partners on the ground in Haiti, and the people we serve in Haiti, where we're hoping to go in at least the next 5 years. CRS began working in Haiti after Hurricane Hazel hit the country. You heard all about the cyclical hurricanes that affect the country. As an organization of the Catholic Church in the U.S., we work in countries around the world on the invitation of the local Catholic Church there. There's a negotiation that goes on, what our role will be, the presence that we'll have in that country, who we will work with, that obviously develops over time, evolves over time. But particularly in Haiti, Catholic Relief Services became an actor on the ground in Haiti in 1954 in the context of supporting the local Catholic Church to respond to the impact of Hurricane Hazel. Since then, you'll see a whole variety of sectoral areas where we work, in which we work in Haiti. And I could spend, well, not me, but all of my fabulous colleagues who are specialists in these particular areas could spend days in talking through what does it mean to work in the area of HIV and AIDS in Haiti. What does it mean to work in the area of water and sanitation? I'm not going to get into the details on that, but just to give you a perspective of the general areas in which we work in Haiti, because we do, as an organization, our mission is, at its highest level to alleviate suffering and promote human development. But we have, over the years, developed certain expertise and approaches, and that play out in a whole variety of contexts in different ways. But overarching all of that is that we promote what we call integral human development, and it's looking at the whole person, all the various assets that an individual, a family, a community bring to their own development, and where, as an international relief and development agency, we can be involved in facilitating maybe areas that need a little bit more support. So it means that we're not a specialist just in health, we're not a specialist agency just in microfinance. We do a wide variety of things because we try to be sure that we're able to approach, respond to a wide variety of needs that all of us as human beings have. In terms of these interventions, I did mention just a couple of things that are overarching. I just spoke a little bit to supporting kind of communities to participate in decision-making in their own lives as agents of change in their own lives is something that we weave throughout all of our programming. Increasing resilience. A lot of our programs, we try to find ways in which we're not just addressing sort of the here and now, an individual sort of issue that someone's facing in that time, but really looking at the bigger picture and looking particularly at shocks that could occur. And the most obvious is looking at cyclical shocks of hurricanes and working with, say, rural farmers, in which we don't want to just look at increasing food productivity, but you've got to be thinking all the time, what happens when the next hurricane hits? What happens when the drought is worsened this year, et cetera, so that those kind of aspects of the longer term sustainability of the work are constantly woven in to the project at hand. And then advocating for good governance is not something that is always sort of overt in some of the work that we do. We do have particular work in social justice and human rights and promoting civil society, the role of local organizations and communities in civil society. But again, something that we try to weave into all of our programming. There's usually an opportunity to figure out a way in which maybe, for example, staying with the agriculture example, you're helping to increase productivity. You're also helping to form farmers groups who can advocate with their local government for whatever it is that might help the whole community. So another sort of major kind of theme that we weave through all of our work. I'm going to show a very short video just to give you a little bit of a feeling of that moment in time. On January 12th. I think it's important in part not just to, I think you all know, we've all seen what happened there. We weren't there, maybe somebody in this room was, but obviously as human beings you can kind of feel the sense of things. But I think the point of this is to put you in patients' shoes to that particular part of the country that was affected to the extent possible, where we are right now. But also to, how do I put it? Anyway, I'll speak to it in a moment, but just to give you a sense of this. What I wanted to say, and lost my train of thought there for a moment, was that the drama of what happened, the trauma of what happened, is going to be with Haitians for many, many years to come. And it's people are working hard right now. They're moving quickly. They're trying to rebuild their lives, their society, their homes, etc. But the trauma of what occurred in only 35 seconds, the amount of time that video took. That's how long it took for this to happen. And I just think that montage helps to kind of put it into that perspective. Just put yourself in that moment in time and think, all it took was 35 seconds. But the point, I think the bigger point, goes to what Professor Keita was speaking to. The whole idea that this was 35 seconds built on decades, if not centuries, of injustice, structural problems, external actors having an influence on this small country, incredibly small country, having such a negative impact on the country over time, and Haitians themselves setting up a context in the country that that resulted in a natural disaster of very high magnitude having an impact that was maybe beyond what it could have been in different circumstances. That's all. You can look in hindsight and say, oh, if only there had been better building standards and so on and so forth, things would have been less negative in what happened in the country. You can look at Chile and the earthquake that occurred there only a couple of months later and the impact that it had on human life and livelihoods. And you can see how all of those decades and decades of lack of investment, of geopolitics playing out in a small island nation, of illiteracy rates being unbelievably high, of unemployment, of poor infrastructure, of little electricity, little water delivery, basic services not being available to the people, and you see the result. $7.8 billion might seem like a drop in the bucket if you look at the US government budget, but for the government of Haiti, very, very significant. Not only will they be living out the trauma of what happened at this moment in time and the subsequent months to today, but they'll be living it out for decades to come in terms of how they recover as a nation, not just socially and politically, but economically as well. In terms of the Earthquake Response and Recovery Program for CRS, broad strokes, in an immediate emergency response, it's about saving lives. It's as simple as that, as hard as that when it comes down to actually how you do it, but as simple as that in terms of the immediate response and the efforts that an organization such as mine and all of our partners on the ground are focused on. But we try as quickly as possible to start moving to supporting sustainable livelihoods. It's helping people to get back on their feet in whatever way that might be, so that they can start to recover their own livelihoods and not rely on external support. That's extremely loaded kind of comment in a place like Haiti, where the vast majority of people in the country have been relying on external support for quite some time. And then again, this third sort of aspect of it in terms of strengthening civil society. It's something, again, that we try to weave through all of our work. It's a little bit hard to kind of grab hold of, but an important aspect of the work that we do. These are the sectors that we're working in terms of the immediate response, and these will shift over time. Some camp support, for example, we've been decreasing for a variety of reasons. And in other areas we'll be increasing the support that we're providing. But I'll talk through a little bit, try to give some highlights of what that means, what all these kind of activities in these different sectors mean, and then a few of just the achievements to date. And I just want to be clear, when I talk about the work of Catholic Relief Services in Haiti or anywhere else in the world, it's not just about CRS. CRS, our MO in wherever we work around the world is to work with local partners. Our primary local partner is the local Catholic Church, and our sister agency in countries around the world is Caritas. We're part of the Caritas Internationales Confederation. The, I think, equivalent in the United States would be Catholic Charities. Every country in the world almost, I think there are 169 members of the Caritas Internationales Confederation, has a national Caritas structure and Caritas agencies in each diocese that provide social service delivery in a variety of sectors. There's no kind of one-size-fits-all approach, but they have public health work, they have medical work in some places, HIV and AIDS work, microfinance support, agriculture support, peace and justice work. So that's our natural partner, and in Haiti we work with the National Caritas Agency as well as diocesan Caritases. We also work with a lot of other partners. We're not limited to working with Caritas, but just to kind of put that out there, because I'll say CRS, but I don't just mean CRS. I will also say, though, in a place like Haiti, we have become much more operational than we would typically be. We have 600 staff in Haiti right now. that's atypical of a CRS program. There might be about a few other programs like that around the world where we have our own staff in a size of that magnitude, and that speaks to some of these issues around capacity, local capacity, and which is a serious issue and something that we're trying to address in a more effective manner in the years to come. It's one of those things where we look back at 55 years in the country and say that's one area where we really didn't succeed as we would have liked. But just to speak then a little bit to some of the work that we're doing since the earthquake, we were working with the oldest Catholic hospital in Port-au-Prince prior to the earthquake, Saint François de Sales, which is right down near the Palais National that collapsed downtown near the Champ de Mars. And the hospital, 80% of the hospital collapsed. About 65 bodies, people, workers in the hospital, mothers, children, patients, family members are buried in the rubble there. But about 20% of the buildings remained, and a courtyard remained, and the staff immediately started trying to figure out how to serve the people who were injured, people walking through the door, starting right after the earthquake with broken arms, broken legs, other kinds of very serious injuries. My colleagues were able to go down there within 24 hours. A lot of our office is a little bit away, and it was very hard to maneuver through streets immediately following the earthquake. But they were able to get down there within 24 hours and touch base with our colleagues down there and figure out what needed to be done in the short term, and immediately set up triage centers and in the courtyard that was unaffected. And were able to start work with people that basically just walked in the door about a week after, during the course of the week, volunteers from all over the world. Not the best way to go about doing things, but certainly it was useful at that moment in time. I think there were some Dutch doctors that came in and some others, and were able to get started on immediate response. You'll see when I go to the next slide, we developed from there within a couple of weeks a very structured partnership with the University of Maryland Shock Trauma Hospital. We had been working with the University of Maryland Institute for Infectious Diseases, actually Institute for Human Virology, experts in infectious diseases on antiretroviral therapy programs. We were able to connect with those people that we already knew up there and engage one of the premier shock trauma hospital staffs in the world. And over the course of the following 5 months, brought down teams that worked to the extent possible with the local doctors at the hospital to perform over 900 surgeries, some of which were repairing not so well done surgeries over the course of the first month by well-intentioned but perhaps not the best placed people to do some immediate support that was needed. Some tremendous work has been done at that hospital, and there's a whole story behind it that I could go into later if someone is interested. But that was one of our major areas of focus at the beginning. The second was serving some of these spontaneous displaced persons camps that emerged. People were obviously terrified to go back into their homes. Some had lost their homes completely. Others were afraid to go back where they saw cracks in the wall. And remember that over the course of the following couple of months, tremors were happening, aftershocks were happening, quite frequently, some very, very strong. So people were very concerned and ended up out in the streets and eventually ended up in open areas. So Champ de Mars, the kind of plaza in front of the Palais National, is now a displaced persons camp. Thousands of people living there. This is a picture of the Pétionville Golf Club. There is actually an aerial photo that I wish I had brought. I was thinking about it when Professor Galdano was showing some of his pictures. That was in the New York Times. That really kind of dramatizes what happened, and it shows an aerial shot of the land prior to the earthquake and maybe a few days later, and completely covered, barely any open space. People started flocking into the golf course and setting up, bringing whatever they had with them, whatever household items they could bring, and making some very rustic sort of shelters. And by I would say week 2 or 3, about 45,000 people were living on this golf course. So put that in your head. Think of a golf course, put 45,000 people there, but add to it that this is a really bad golf course. From what little I know, it's on like a 45-degree angle. So not only were people on this kind of just basics, but there was a hill going up. So when the first rains came, you could imagine what people experienced. So we, our staff, who we had brought in a number of people, experts in emergency response from around the world, two of whom were down within 48 hours to the DR and drove across the border, who were kind of working with our partners and others and assessing what was going on, got to this area. The 82nd Airborne was there. They had just arrived and were at a loss, not quite sure what to do with 45,000 people. We're flying in helicopters. Maybe your son was, I don't know if he's 82nd Airborne, but they were bringing in bottled water and other sort of basic supplies. We're very happy to see an organization like Catholic Relief Services show up, and we had a tremendous partnership. And I say that with a whole lot of sort of like, issues around civil military, the role of civil military and the way organizations such as mine interface with the military. In this situation, I thought it was everyone playing to their very best, and with the shared objective of meeting basic human needs and alleviating suffering. And we had a tremendously positive partnership with the 82nd Airborne over the course of about 3 months or so, where they helped provide tremendous logistics support that we couldn't possibly have done on our own at the beginning. We provided the expertise in how you work with a community that's just been traumatized like this and displaced, to organize small community groups within that larger community to count people, identify families, figure out who the most vulnerable are, organize a system that is respectful of the people that we're serving and organized to prevent any security problems when you have a crowd like that. And we ended up doing, I thought, my colleagues' exceptional work in some basic food distributions and non-food items, kits of just basic hygiene items that people needed. We served that group for about 3 months with that kind of assistance and the help of the 82nd Airborne on the logistics and some of the security, crowd control, basically. That kind of speaks a little bit just to the idea that working with communities to help them to help themselves. We were able to identify, and I'm sure he kind of presented himself, a Haitian pastor who ended up being unbelievably helpful in organizing people. And I think we must have hired about 50 people within the community to basically do a census of this large camp in a very organized way so that first distribution could be done within about a week and a half, 2 weeks. Obviously, that's not a long-term solution. Unfortunately, people are still living in the camp like that. And there are a whole number of reasons for that. It's extremely frustrating for everyone involved. Obviously, for the people living under these tents, it's scary to think that they might be living there for another year or two. I think that's a very real possibility. We've already done a second major distribution for that camp and a couple of others of new tarps, because the tarps that they had, which were pretty high quality tarps, have already been destroyed more or less over the course of the last 9 months. We've done tremendous work with partners, not just CRS and not just local partners, but a lot of other international organizations who are in this particular camp to do flood mitigation, to dig canals. That golf course will never be the same. It's got canals that run through it, and efforts that have been gone on for several months to just try to make it a safer place to the extent that that's possible. But what we really want to see happen is people moving into what we're calling T shelters, transitional shelters. This is not permanent housing, but they are shelters that have been developed according to experienced people in the shelter sector from around the world and other emergencies. Some basic housing that can withstand hurricanes. It's built on a concrete slab. It has a tin roof, but it has reinforcements to make sure that roof doesn't fly off in high winds. But it also is set up in a way where it can be dismantled and moved, because one of the major challenges we're facing in Port-au-Prince, that people are facing, the government and others who are trying to find a housing solution for all the people who've lost their homes, is the land tenure issue that colleagues have referred to. The estimate is about 70% of people in Port-au-Prince rented before the earthquake, didn't own the property that they were living on. And that creates all sorts of challenges about where you build a house and who that house belongs to. So there's tremendous challenges about land title, and the effort at the beginning of the emergency with the government and others was to find space outside of town. There wasn't much open space in Port-au-Prince. To find space outside of town, all sorts of challenges around that, about the whole issue of a government that has not been very effective, that is beholden to certain interests, the very small number of individuals who own the vast majority of land in the country, concern, I think, about on the part of the politicians to rock the boat and take land away from landowners, claim it. Tremendous fear. So a lot of concern on the part of organizations such as mine. Why isn't this moving faster? Why aren't we being told where we could start building these shelters? It took months before the government was able to identify some land. And when they did, it was not the best spot in the world. People did not want to go there. It was too far from town, too far from their livelihoods, too far from their families, their extended families and communities. And it's become a real problem. But it took months for us to understand that dynamic and realize that wasn't going to be the best solution. And only a few months ago, we started shifting gears and trying to figure out how do we work with the people living in these communities to go back with them individually. And you can imagine 40,000, 45,000 just in that one camp. That's not counting, the other camps that, about over 1 million people who are homeless. But going back to their home site and looking at it and trying to figure out, is this a site where we can remove the debris, get a small group of people together, pay them to remove the debris, break the debris up into small bits that could be used to make other kind of concrete and materials, and figure out who owns that land, figure out how to rebuild this house to involve the community. Because one thing we're trying very hard to do is figure out how to help reestablish a feeling of community. If you've got 5 houses next to each other on a street and 2 of them have been destroyed, and you come in and provide 2 perhaps nicer houses than the 3 that were there, and someone's coming with supplies that they bring from the camp and other kinds of things, you don't want to create discord in that community and jealousy and other things which are basic human nature. And we wanted to find ways in which we can work with that community to provide other services that might be needed in that community, and to actually engage neighbors to build that house for the individual, and to try to start helping to reinforce that community feeling and pride. It's a longer term, it takes a longer time to do this. It's difficult, it takes more staff, more expertise, but we think it's the right thing to do. And we are hoping to have 2,000 houses, these transitional shelters, built by December, and another 6,000 that we're helping to support via 3 other organizations. So 8,000 houses is the expectation that we'll get that done by December. There are a lot of other organizations working on housing, but it's still a drop in the bucket compared to the need. This is just a picture of some of the kits that were given out. These were compiled, these were just basic hygiene kits and some ready-to-food eat biscuits and that kind of thing that were distributed at the very beginning of the emergency. These were compiled by volunteers in Santo Domingo, Catholic Church volunteers who had been organized there and worked day and night for weeks and weeks to pull these materials together, and then we shipped them across the border. The DR opened the border for a period of time which was unbelievably important. The Santo Domingo became our staging area for the immediate response. Everything was coming out of the DR. We were shipping things from all over the world, where we had pre-positioned supplies, and as well as we had pre-positioned supplies in Miami, and things were all going into the DR. We had a shipping company that gave us free cargo space on boats that were going down, ships that were going down anyway, twice a week. So we very quickly we were able to get a pipeline going in through the DR and across the border. When customs got up and running again on the Haitian side and also on the DR side, things slowed down dramatically, and there were some major challenges. I won't get into that right now, but that first period of time, it was tremendously important and helpful to have that governmental support from both the Haiti side and the DR side. One of the things we do is, in trying to help people to recover their livelihoods, is to focus on just providing some income, basic income. And one way to do that, especially in an emergency where you've got so many infrastructure needs and big projects that could be undertaken, is to simply hire teams of people to do some, in this instance, clearing of a canal, a drainage canal. And we try to focus on hiring women and also hiring populations that might not be able to normally find work very easily, handicapped and others, and find ways to help provide them with some basic support. These are short-term, one-off kinds of projects. The project might last for 2 weeks or a month, but it's an important way to both get an important job done and provide a little bit of income to those that desperately need it. One of the most important sort of areas that we work in that doesn't necessarily cost a lot of money and that we don't actually promote very much for a number of reasons is what we call protection. It's one thing to provide for all sorts of basic human needs. Everyone needs water and food and so on. But in civil conflict, you see this most. A lot of times my colleagues, to put it very, very crudely, would say, why are we helping to feed people and then they get killed the next day, or they get hurt, or disappeared, or whatever? Because ultimately it's about human security. You have to meet basic needs, but if there's no security and no protection, especially for the most vulnerable in society, then ultimately that person has not gotten the assistance that they really need and the support they need. So one of the things we do in terms of protection is really try to seek out the most vulnerable. Obviously children in these kinds of situations, but women, handicapped, others. We try to see if there might be some programs that we can set up to help them specifically. So in a place like the Pétionville camp, what we've done with partners is set up what we call child-friendly spaces. So these are just basically tents, big tents, put throughout the community, the camp, where children can come, and at the beginning of the emergency, I don't think we're doing it quite so much now, there were trained counselors, therapists who through play and music and drawing could help the children to deal with the conditions they were in and what happened with the earthquake. And then just basic games and an opportunity for children to come to a place during the day where they felt safe and supported. This picture isn't actually of that. This picture is actually work that we're doing in the northeast of the country with the Juanista Sisters, a group of Colombian nuns that have been present in Haiti for some time on the northeast border, to try to prevent human trafficking. It's a phenomenon that occurs in Haiti on a daily basis pre-earthquake. There was an increase, although we don't have actual hard numbers on this kind of thing, since it is so underground and such a difficult thing to get your arms around. But we're working on trying to prevent trafficking of people across the border into the DR for labor, prostitution, and some people for onboard trafficking beyond the borders of the DR. This is actually a young woman who works for an organization called Heartland Alliance, who is she's trained in working with children when they're coming across a bridge. There's a bridge that leads across from the DR side, the Haiti side, to the DR. This is all very organized with the national and local police. And they have to have a police officer present with them for them to do this work. But they stand on a daily basis on this bridge. When a child comes across the border, they approach the individual, the adult with the child, and try to ascertain if that child truly does belong with that adult. You can imagine how difficult that is. They separate the child and the adult and try to have a conversation and figure it out. It's a judgment call in many circumstances. It's extremely dangerous. Traffickers make a lot of money in that context, but it's incredibly important work. The sisters they created a safe house, and it's a place where the children, if there is a child who is identified as not belonging to that individual, they can take that child to the safe house, where we also have a family tracing and reunification program in conjunction with UNICEF and others to try to figure out where that child belongs. Now, this is not just earthquake related. There are children, this has been happening, so it's something that has been a long time in coming, I think, to provide some of these services. We also provide services to training to the national police and the police in the Fort Liberté area, the capital city of that department, to understand and recognize these issues, but also to understand their own laws against it and their own and the international law that the country, the Republic of Haiti, has signed on to try to strengthen the legal system and protection for these victims of trafficking. It's interesting, fascinating work, extremely important, but something that we do try to keep a little bit under the radar because of the security aspects. This is a sister, this is one of the counselors. She came from Caritas Lebanon, where there's a center for our sister agency in Lebanon of trained counselors that provide assistance to domestic abuse victims. And we were able to bring 2 teams from Lebanon over the course of about the first 5 months to Haiti to work with our partners there and our staff and create the child-friendly centers and provide some of the counseling support. So just to show a little bit again how we work with partners and that international sort of perspective of linking in with partners around the world and their expertise. And finally, this is just a photo of a farmer. We continue this work in the rural areas, some of those areas that weren't directly impacted by the earthquake, but we consider all of Haiti impacted by the earthquake just because of the magnitude of the issue or the event, the impact of it, but also because a lot of rural communities had to absorb displaced family members who went back home because there was nowhere else to go. We did an assessment in the southern, what we call the Southern Claw, that southern peninsula, out near Jeremy, and did a quick assessment just of what people were experiencing there about a month after the earthquake. And on average, the people that were interviewed had 7 additional family members in their house. And you can imagine what that's like for people who are already struggling, living on a daily subsistence kind of level. So one thing that we were able to do also in the Northeast was to provide just vouchers, basically food stamps, but so people could access, we didn't deliver food, there was food in the markets, they just needed some assistance to access the food. We went back about 5 months later and discovered that about 4 of those 7 people on average went back to Port-au-Prince to try to recoup, try to figure out what happened to their property and try to figure out if they could get some kind of work. Again, it's that pull of that city from the rural areas, because despite the fact that it's really hard to live in Port-au-Prince, people still see an opportunity there that they don't see in the rural areas. And that is part of this broader phenomenon in the country that they're facing and are trying to figure out how to decentralize the country and provide more opportunities for employment, education, health services outside of the greater Port-au-Prince area. So just to highlight some things, these are just numbers, so I won't go into too much detail, but just to share a little bit of what we've achieved over the course of the last 9 months with our partners. Has been, again, very much focused on that meeting immediate needs side of things, the saving lives, the trying to start kind of stabilize things, particularly in the housing area. But some highlights are that there were about 35,000 consultations for primary healthcare support in the camps. Teams of doctors, nurses, and community health workers were going out. I think those teams have since been disbanded, although I'm not entirely sure of that, because I think a lot of other organizations have set up more permanent sort of clinics in the camps. But at least at that beginning stage, there were consultations that were conducted. An effort was a very big effort underway at the beginning of the emergency, very shortly after, to make sure children continued to get their vaccines. So we provided about 12,000 vaccinations, about 30,000 consultations in the hospitals, and as I mentioned with the shock trauma team out of University of Maryland, over 900 surgeries. And we also are partnering with the St. Charles Rehabilitation Center, a little bit outside of the main Port-au-Prince area, to provide some rehabilitation services. You can imagine the need for support to people who have received prosthetics, who've had to have limbs amputated or had severe orthopedic injuries. In terms of livelihood and food security, some of the immediate food assistance, which had to stop, it was dictated by the government of Haiti around end of April, early May, to stop general food distributions. And there were some very good reasons for this, and we were supportive of it. Didn't really like the way it happened in terms of the abruptness of it, but the concern was that local food producers were not going to be able to continue to produce and make their own living and continue the agricultural production in the area when free food was being given out to the vast majority of the population. So it was an important decision, a right decision. Did some people suffer? Probably, and that's very disconcerting. But I think it was something that they did need to do. We were able, and we do continue to provide institutional support. So we provide about food assistance to about 70 orphanages, homes for the elderly, and other kinds of social safety net institutions and organizations in the greater Port-au-Prince area. Food security is a major issue. There's a deficit of something like 400 kilocalories per day for a typical Haitian in terms of their food basic needs of caloric intake. So it continues to be an issue. We had a school feeding program prior to the earthquake that expanded by about 30,000 children because, again, kids were being displaced. Most of that food program is in the southern peninsula, but they've absorbed tens of thousands of more children into these schools, so we were able to increase the assistance provided for those children. I already mentioned some of the protection work, and then the water and sanitation work, which is also incredibly important. I understand there'll be a symposium here in November to talk about that in a little more specificity. Really incredibly important for the obvious reasons of, again, meeting basic human needs, but also preventing other kinds of illnesses, waterborne illnesses especially. I think it was something I read in a testimony, I think that's in the back, by Dr. Paul Farmer, where he mentioned that there was a study, I think that was done by the CDC, I'm not sure who did it, that showed a drop in diarrheal disease in the country, which they attribute to all of these organizations providing clean water. Which is obviously not sustainable. So that, they're trying to find, again, longer term, more durable solutions. One of them is trying to keep up some of the progress, if you can call it that was made by paying more attention to this particular sector post-earthquake. So one of the things in terms of the approach that CRS takes, I've mentioned a couple of times our principles. We spend inordinate amounts of time, especially in my position myself as an operations person, someone who's dealing with the programming itself, in focusing on quality of our programming, our technical standards, meeting the needs of as many people as we possibly can in these kinds of difficult circumstances, marshaling resources, logistics pipelines. You can imagine some of the details that you get kind of pulled into in these kinds of situations. But we always try to make sure that we're not forgetting these core principles and these really important kind of underlying aspects or approaches to the work that we do that we need to constantly keep in our mind. And those are things like just the commitment to the long term. We're not a short-term relief agency. We do relief and development. And it's not a continuum. You just don't go from relief to development from one day to the next. It's more of a cycle, where you've got shocks like an earthquake or a drought or a flood that hit you, and then you try to get back on your feet. It might happen again, it might not. You want to break people out of that cycle of poverty, but you're always going to be faced with these issues of cyclical shocks and other things. But as an organization, we are organized in a way where we can work all along that continuum. And it helps when you're doing relief work to be thinking about the long term, to be working with local communities and trying to figure out how to support them in the best way possible and maintain those relationships over time as needs change. Again, as all of us experience, our needs change over time. Haitians empowered in their own recovery, some very lofty words, really hard to do for a variety of reasons. I think Dr. Keita spoke to some of this. There's a phenomenon, a history, a dynamic in the country of Haiti that is extremely negative in many ways and has resulted in an unbelievable number of organizations, people of really good will present in the country, but maybe not doing what a real service to the people of Haiti. Sometimes doing for them what they can do for themselves, sometimes doing negative things that aren't helping people in Haiti. And I include my own organization in that kind of characterization. I think we're a little more sophisticated. I like to think that we have our eyes open, that we pay more attention to these issues, but it happens, and it has been happening for decades. And we're trying very hard to shift some of the way in which we work to keep this in mind and truly empower the people that we serve to help themselves. And that includes not just the people we serve, individuals, but also our partners. And the Haitian Church is a really important agent of change in Haiti. We're trying to find ways in which we can support the Haitian Church at all levels, including the bishops as an important kind of leadership voice in the country that hasn't been heard, and partly their own fault, partly because they, a whole variety of reasons, but also all those people that make up the church in Haiti. CRS has traditionally worked with the institutional church in Haiti, again, because of our historical legacy, our work with our partners, our Caritas partners primarily, but there are many, many, many other church partners and players in Haiti, congregations, others. So we're trying to figure out how to broaden that our relationships with a whole variety of different groups. because we feel that this goes back to what I mentioned in one of the earlier slides around the role of civil society, and the Haitian church is an incredibly important actor in civil society, again at all these different levels. Trying to help strengthen civil society in that regard. Targeting those that are most vulnerable seems pretty obvious, but in a place like Haiti where the poverty levels are so high, almost everybody is vulnerable in one way or another, except for perhaps that small elite. So it's a struggle. It's not an easy thing to do in a place like Haiti. And I can give you an example of the Pétionville Club, where when this site that I mentioned that the government identified for relocation of people and to build some transitional shelters for a longer term, not long term, but a medium term solution, let's say, we worked with camp management to move about 4,000 people out of the camp. People that were living in the most dangerous parts of the camp, low-lying areas that would be flooded away and so on. Very organized, well done. People were given some additional cash support and were given a place to live out there. Again, lots of reasons why they didn't want to be out there, which we discovered later on. But within about a week, about 4,000 more people came in and took over that space. Why? They had a house. They were in their community. There were NGOs providing water and sanitation and healthcare and child-friendly spaces and other kinds of things. So people just, when your relative level of living standard is such that even that marginal additional assistance is usually important, you've got to get an extremely challenging phenomenon. And finally, I won't speak too long about integral human development, but that's our conceptual framework for how we understand the work that we do. And it involves not just meeting basic needs, as I mentioned earlier, trying to figure out what people bring to their own development as well and to lift that up. But it also tries to look at systems and structures, those underlying causes of injustice and poverty, and trying to start addressing those in a number of ways. I might be going over here. I'm not sure about the timing, but just to say, in the U.S., we also focus very much on the United States, particularly the Catholic community in the United States, and try to provide opportunities for people to engage in our work overseas. These are the broad categories in which we try to provide resources and support to people. I like to emphasize the give part. I think it's a good one from my own operations perspective. Although I will say for Haiti, people have been unbelievably generous, and it's provided us with an opportunity to really do some large-scale programming and look longer term, which has been unbelievably important. But there are other aspects. Obviously, not everyone can give. Not everyone can go to Haiti, provide a service. So other aspects are just education. We provide a lot of educational materials. It's learning about the country, learning about the history that Dr. Keita referred to and spoke to, incredibly complex and overlooked in our culture, in our society. We try to provide at least some basic kind of support for that. And in terms of ACT, there's a lot that Americans can do to support future positive development in Haiti. And one thing is to engage in the Catholics Confront Global Poverty campaign that CRS and the U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops have initiated, that look at these broad areas of advocacy and particularly legislative activity that's happening in Congress. And around Haiti, these particular areas, we're working very hard to try to be sure that the voice of Haitians is brought into this understanding on the part of our members of Congress when they're dealing with legislation that affects Haiti, trade policy, the foreign assistance that's going to be provided, how it's provided. So we work very hard to try to provide this kind of support, and by engaging in this Catholics Confront Global Poverty campaign, people can get text messages, emails that highlight what the issues are and when a vote is coming up in Congress, so that people can here engage in calling their congressperson to advocate for the best possible policy or law to support Haitians. Merci en pile. Thank you very much. I would love to take questions. I'm sorry if I went over, but I want to get over. Thank you.
We can take about 3-4 minutes of questions, and then we'll be breaking for lunch for about 15 minutes or so and coming back to engage Anne-Marie in more discussion. Okay? Yes.
CRS has received criticism because the numbers seem to show that CRS was on the lower end of the amount of money allocated for immediate relief. Mm-hmm. Is that true? Was that a decision, and what is the justification for that decision?
Sure. Now, I'm glad you asked the question because that was, I thought, extremely unfortunate and a very kind of broad stroke painting of what the actual situation is. If you look now, we are not sort of on the lower end. When they asked the question, there was a CBS News story, for those of you that might not be aware, in May, I think, or June. And it showed that we had only spent a very small amount of the funding that we had received. And CRS is one of the largest private organizations in terms of the amount of funding that we've received for the earthquake response. The basic fact of the matter, we hadn't accounted for it yet. We'd spent it, but our staff spend more time doing than accounting, and to be blunt about it. It was all sort of in the pipeline, and when we finally, because of this story, said, you know, finance people get moving because we need to kind of account for all this. The current numbers, which you can see in the book, are on a par with other organizations. So it wasn't a deliberate decision. We weren't underspending. We were working incredibly hard. Spent about $39 million in the first 6 months. And probably more than that, because you know, purchases that get made don't get paid until 3 or 4 months later. You know, when looking at that, it was funny because I remember going into my boss and saying, I just wrote a check for $1.2 million. Well, I signed a check to buy, you know, lumber for building these houses, and it's not here, and the medical costs aren't here. In the end, quite frankly, I don't care about that. That's not important in the big scheme of things. It's important if people think I'm not going to give to that organization or support that organization if they're not spending the money wisely. From my own personal perspective, I'm about doing the work, and we'll let other people at CRS deal with that, the fallout. It was unfortunate. It was inaccurate. Yes?
Just to follow up a bit, the question of credibility, perception, and the media, which all organizations have to deal with. What relief organization, or what can relief organizations do in partnering with multimedia opportunities to get the word out? I missed the CBS report, so I was immediately shocked when I heard the report, hearsay, and was not at all surprised when you says what you says. And so,
yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate the media is going to paint the picture that makes the biggest story and sells the most newspapers, and that's just the nature of the media. So we do try to work with the media in educating and providing reports, and the report that we have for you, that's actually for our donors. It's our responsibility to account back for how we're spending the money, and we will do that every 6 months until the money has been spent, as we did with the tsunami response. We try to be very transparent. It's on our website, in trying to provide those kinds of that kind of information. Again, we are slow in just our systems and accounting for all of these things. But I think, trying to educate the media, working with them, our staff do that. We do sort of encourage reporters to go down and meet with our staff, see the program, see the work that's being done. But it is an education process, and it's tough because you are dealing with their need and their kind of angle. And that particular reporter, I mean, I just thought that was such a shoddy job, quite frankly. But NPR and others have done really wonderful work. Sorry, go ahead.
Just a quick follow-up on credibility. Was Lisa Anderson at Columbia at any time when we were there?
Not that I recall.
Okay, she just recently completed tenure as the Dean of the International.
She wasn't there at the time.
But she has a book that I think would be very, very helpful for others to be aware of if they're not. On politics and power in the 21st century, where she does a very, very good history of the development of social science methodology and then brings it home, meaning to the United States, and says that's the model that has gone out to all of the sovereign nation, state universities, higher education, and it doesn't work. And it doesn't work because it's not holistic, and so you've got the academics who are cranking numbers, and they're reporting on CBS and comparable. So when we move to talking about areas for partnership, and particularly the academic side, can you provide us by way of anticipation of how academics can be more credible as Dr. Keita was credible, and Frank, I'm sorry I missed your presentation, but the credibility that we're hearing here, how can we expand that so as to have a partnership with CRS, Villanova University, and others, but have the academics actually contribute and recognize that you didn't bring things down at all, but rather what you did was to provide what Dr. Keita set for the experiential affective realities that makes us agents.
Yeah, it's a good point, and it's something I think that we are, as an organization with Catholic Relief Services for the last few years, starting these more sort of formal partnerships with universities and trying to figure that out. I mean, that is ultimately about bringing academia together with practitioners,
right,
and trying to find that happy middle where we learn from each other, support each other, and you bring more informed, perhaps, from reality and daily living, teaching in the classroom, and we bring that academic study and experience and perspective to the work that we do in serving the poor and vulnerable overseas. In some respects, in some examples, we've had tremendously great and positive collaborations. Others have not been so, and I do think part of that is learning more about each other and how we work and what's important to us, what drives us, who we're beholden to, and so on and so forth. But I think it's getting better. I see a lot of opportunity, and I know that's part of what we're going to be talking about a little bit over lunch.
Mm-hmm. Polly, will you be back after lunch? Okay. Before I thank Anne-Marie, I just want to, because I know some of you are leaving, Anne-Marie mentioned a November 8th conference. We are going to be holding a major symposium on the global water crisis, conflict, and cooperation on November 8th. Ken Hackett, the president of Catholic Relief Services, will be giving the plenary address. He will be addressing the situation in Haiti. That's in the evening at 7:30. But this conference is going to cover issues like the privatization of water, appropriate technology, public health and water and conflict. We have our faculty from the law school participating. There's going to be a special session for engineers on Sunday night. It's going to be a pre-conference Sunday night for engineers to help them think through possibilities, career choices in engineering, international development, humanitarian engineering, and peace building. So I just wanted to lock that in, keep that in the back of your brains. We'll be doing a lot of publicity on this. But we are going to, wait 1 second, we are going to, I see my students zipping their bags in. We're going to reconvene at 12:45. We've got lunch in the back. You can bring your lunch to your table, and we'll go then from 12:45 to 1:30 and have an extended conversation with Anne-Marie. But I do want to thank you for bringing all of your experience and sharing it with us, and in such an effective way. I look forward to more conversation with you, Anne-Marie.